Welcome to Free Range Flock. We were once the latchkey kids who came home to an empty house after school. We were feral, resilient, cynical, and innovative. Older than Google. Our teenage faces were never posted on social media. The internet was just an idea in our youth. Now we are older, wiser, and thriving. Our independent ways will continue to serve us. We plan to keep defying the odds, and we will carve our own path. With grace, with humor, with joy. Our way. We've been through some stuff. We will continue to keep pushing, and we are not going anywhere. The former latchkey kids are now the free range flock.
Sarah.
Amy.
What's the last thing you bought? This purchase, instead of groceries, what's the last thing you bought?
I recently purchased a backpack. So an Osprey backpack, which is like one of my favorite brands. And it's green, and it's this big, huge thing that I was planning on taking to Mexico but my trip got canceled. And anyway, it's in the closet with the tag still on it.
Aw. I do love a good backpack.
I do too.
I have, I think you and I share a love of good purses and handbags, and that is something I got from my grandmother. I have a trunk full of and more of purses, and I don't have enough. I've got to keep buying those purses today. But I brought this up because today we're going to talk about clutter and things and stuff.
Oh, no.
You and I have had multiple conversations about this, and our relationship with stuff has evolved over our lifetime. So as we've gotten older, I'm sure many of our free flock out there, we're in our 50s and 60s, we have experienced maybe at least once someone that we know, whether it be a grandparent, parent, or a loved one who has passed away, and you enter their house and then you now have to get rid of all their stuff.
Yes.
I use the word stuff because it has these are my things, these are my nice things, and then it becomes stuff. So,
yes.
Once it's no longer needed, it becomes stuff. So our relationship with things have really changed. I know personally mine has changed, and we're going to talk about our experiences here. But it changes how, when you go back to your house, thinking about things and how much you go out and buy.
Yes.
It's kind of completely changed that.
Yes, definitely.
So I want us to share a bit about our personal experiences there and how we've learned about that, and it has changed. I'm sure a lot of our flock is out there has changed as well. What is your kind of a little snapshot of your experience, Sarah?
With stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, definitely come from a background or a home that both my parents were pack rats. So they saved everything. And I think that partially came from they were older. My parents were older. I was a late baby. And so they grew up in the Depression. And so they saved everything because money was tight. And so you never knew when you were going to have to reuse something. So mom, especially, dad too, but mostly mom, tended to hold on to things. And so especially as they got older, it kind of got overwhelming for them.
Right.
And so I remember when first my dad and then my mom got sick, and we started, thinking about cleaning out the house, and, we need to move mom into a smaller place. Having to go through all of those things was because to her they were precious things. She'd
Right.
saved, pottery and plates and dolls and clothes and just all these things that she had collected over the years. And for her, she was thinking, here, I'm going to give you these lovely things, but then I don't like stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like a lot of clutter. And so it was really hard to go through all of that and to see her disappointment of, no, Mom, I really don't want those. I don't need those. I don't have a place for those. And it really hurt her feelings because of it. And I tried to be gentle, but there's only so much you can take home with you when there's that many things.
Right. I've had a similar experience. So my grandparents have passed, and my father has passed, and then I also had to downsize my mom a great deal. When you just made me think of a story. So I remember my mom was going through all the things that she saved of ours, and she put each of my brothers had a box, and then I had a box, and for two of my brothers, I have three brothers, and myself, we were like, no, we don't want it, or we just took it, or we kind of went through it. And my other brother, Andy, just said, I'm just going to take it. He didn't push. He just said, I'm going to take it. He says, I literally came home and I put it in the trash. As he said, I had that brave face in front of them, and then as soon as I got to my home and my trash where that my parents don't have access to, I put it all in there, because he just didn't want it. So, I remember my grandparents lived in the same house for over 55 years, and they really didn't downsize a lot during that time. I mean, they got rid of they cleaned their house and stuff like that. But my grandmother collected the ceramic birds and the plates, the Norman Rockwell plates. Oh my gosh. And to them, it was this is a good investment. One day you're going to sell this and make money. My dad collected, I can't remember the size, the NASCAR cars.
Yes.
And they were still in the boxes, and he would buy them and then stick them in his collection. And he had, oh my gosh, he had over 600 of these. And to him, this was an investment. He kept calling it his retirement plan. This is my retirement plan. I'm going to sell this and retire. And once we had to put him in assisted living, and we had to sell it because we're, trying to liquidate his assets so that we can pay for assisted living. We were begging people to buy it.
Yeah.
We literally sold that entire set for $2,000.
Yeah.
Dad thought he were going to get tons more. And I remember the man taking it apart and putting it in his car. He had to bring a van, and his son was helping him. And the whole time he's like, I'm not sure I did the right thing. And I'm trying to help him. Let's go take all this stuff. Just because it became stuff.
Yeah.
And all this, and they had all this, oh my God, it's more than just a physical thing. They've got all this emotional stuff wrapped around it.
Yeah.
And you got to navigate that, and you got to, what are you going to bring back to your house?
Right.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I know that a lot of us out here are dealing with that, and our relationship with stuff has changed. So let's talk about it a bit and think about your relationship with your stuff. So today we're talking about clutter, things, and stuff. Like many of you, we have all dealt with loved ones who have passed away, and we've had to manage their belongings. So if you've gone through this, then you know it can be very, very stressful and emotional. So you're dealing with all kinds of the memories that it brings up, the sentimentality that it brings up, but then also the emotion of your parents or whoever owned it. You got to deal with that. If they just loved it and you're like, I have no use for this. So, how to handle that. So we're talking about our relationships with stuff and how it's changed and evolved. So, Sarah, you were telling us about how when your mom passed in the pack rat, and then how did you get to the other side of that? How did you deal with that?
So I think one of the things, growing up, I was a pack rat too. My parents were both pack rats. And so I collected things just like most kids do. I had little figurines, and I was really into theater. So I had masks and things like that. But as I got older and then I started moving, I realized what a pain it was to move all the things, And there was one point after my divorce that I moved 5 times in 5 years. And that was hugely impactful for me because it was why do I have all these things? I would be unpacking things that I know I had packed a year ago that I hadn't really used in that year.
Right.
So after that 5th move, when I did the move the 5th time, I was just, I have to downsize. And so I really started, culling things. And it really did change my relationship. I'm much better about periodically going through my stuff and just getting rid of things that I'm no longer using, clothes or, stuff. One of the things, though, that I'm struggling with, even in this point in time, is when you have a small house, and I know you have a small home as well, how do you manage the things that you know you want to keep, but it still isn't, your house isn't big enough to deal with it?
Right. So my history with stuff is, I remember having my own room because I had a bunch of brothers. So I had, as a girl, the only girl, I had my own room. And so I had a good bit of stuff. But then my parents divorced when I was 9, and then we moved a lot. My mom just couldn't afford just trying to find somewhere cheaper. And so I think moving a lot and then going somewhere smaller than smaller. Like we ended up in a trailer outside of town the last time. We really didn't have a lot of stuff. So, we didn't have a lot of stuff. And then during that time, my mom was married at the time when we were living in Kentucky, and we just moved there. And we just moved all our stuff in, and it turns out her husband didn't pay the deposit check bounced, and so the person who officially owned the place, because it bounced, kicked us out, and all of our stuff was in there.
Yeah.
And so he basically said, "You can spend the night, but in the morning you'd be gone." And so we could only take what we could put in the van, and so I lost a lot of my personal things, my record player, a number of records. I mean, just. It sounds trivial now, but I was 15 at the time, so that was huge, that I had to leave a lot of stuff back. So I lost a lot of stuff. And what's funny is that changed my mom's relationship with stuff at that moment. She just is like, whatever I get, I'm going to hold on to. And then she became a pack rat from that. And I had the opposite. I was just like, all right, there's no sense in having a bunch of stuff because I'm going to lose it, So let's just, clothes different, but like stuff. I didn't have a lot of stuff.
Right.
So that definitely changed. But I'm thinking, like, through my life, my relationship with having things has definitely changed. So when I was 27, I moved to Australia for a year, and I remember overpacking. Like I packed. I remember when the Australians were there to greet me, I'm like, I got 3 giant suitcases, and they're like, what? We have washing machines. What are you doing? And so I remember just thinking that it wasn't weird. I'm here for a year. I need to have a lot of stuff. And that trip taught me, and being there taught me so much about, like, I was just trying to bring too much stuff with me. Yeah. And I ended up, like, giving stuff away. Like, I left stuff there. I'm like, you want this shirt, you want this, you want that. And it definitely changed me. And then traveling helps you as well. But then when you become a mom at 42, and, your kids got all this stuff. I mean, stuff. And then it's your only kid, and you don't know what you're doing, so you feel like you got to take half the house with you at all times. I remember you laughing at me like, why is that diaper bag so full? And I'm like, anything could happen. I need to have it for the baby, and
it changes your mindset. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that changed you, and then. My gosh, my house is, when you first walk in, you're like, someone plays with Legos in here. So it's a Lego house. But then my grandfather passed. And then I remember the day of the funeral, everyone came back to my grandmother's house. And my grandmother was so fiercely practical. It was like, I'm not going to wear men's clothes. So, and I've got 8 grandsons who are the same height and weight as my husband. So I'm going to she let all the grandsons go in there and grab all the clothes they wanted. And I remember everyone's like, oh, that's so fantastic. And the boys were so excited because they got to carry a bit of him with him. Mm-hmm. And my mom was, who in her, like, let's keep everything the way it is stage, got very upset because everything was going away.
Right.
And because she wanted, like, almost like she really wanted to make a museum. Like, don't sit in his chair. And I'm no, this is stuff. This isn't a person. This is stuff. You need to stop. And if this stuff could help them, like here's going to get dust. If that could help them, let's let them do that.
Sure.
So I remember that changed me. She was so practical. I thought, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then going through my dad's house, which he didn't have a lot of things. My dad was the king of, I saw a couch by the side of the road, and I liked it, so now it's my couch. I'm like, oh, goodness. So he was big on that, and, my neighbor wanted to get rid of the stuff, so he gave it to me. So Dad had a lot of, like, mishmash kind of stuff, so getting rid of his stuff, there was no, like, sentimental value. That was pretty easy. Like, let's get that to Goodwill, we're done. But then my mom's had been downsized several times, and then helping her with that. And it's hard for her. And sometimes we had to she turns her back and okay, let's throw this box away. Let's just do this. Yes. So yeah, and help her to go through all that stuff. So it does change you. And when you come home and you think about, how am I going to do this differently? Do I want my son, after I pass, which is going to be a long time from now, go through all this stuff? How is he going to deal with this? And you start thinking would he want this? Would he want picking up an object? Would he want this object? And if it's just, if it's not serving me, then why am I holding on to it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know you and I both have a lot of handbags, but we don't really collect plates and birds and things that our grandparents and parents did. So I don't have collections of stuff. And I'm not hey, I do have a few handbags. You're going to make a bank on this when I retire, or when I pass. No, he's not. So I think Gen X, our free flockers are going to think differently about stuff. We're not so mixed on the whole, if any of us have normal Rockwell plates, I'm sad if I've offended you, but none of us really have that, or go to do that. So it's all changing.
I think part of that too is the whole. I think we have. We've realized that things are just things.
Yeah.
We have a different relationship with material objects. We joke a lot in our household because my friend David, his daughter is kind of like our litmus test, because when we see something, we always ask, would Heather want this in her house?
Right.
Because it's she doesn't want anything you have to dust. She doesn't like clutter.
Right.
It's very straightforward. So that's kind of our litmus test is, would Heather want it in her house?
Right. My brother calls it a dustable. I'm that's not something I got to dust. I just don't want that. So yeah, the whole knick-knack chalk cheese things, that's
exactly.
really not us. One of the many conversations that Sarah and I have had, we have oodles of conversations about stuff because we're going through the same things. It's amazing. But we were driving back from Tennessee from a vacation, and Sarah's like, have you ever heard of Swedish death cleaning? I'm like, what the heck? Where did you go? What are you talking about? So can you talk about this concept?
Sure. And I can't say, where I heard it originally. It was a podcast, but I can't even remember.
It's actually
which
a book.
One.
The lady who wrote it was,
Yeah, but I think I heard a reference on a podcast. But at any rate, yes, I knew it's a book, and what the concept is, in certain areas of Sweden, people will try to do basically a purge of their house as they're aging. So they want to do a lot of the work that their kids would have to do after they pass. So they're going to go through their books and their clothes and their house and find things that either can be thrown away or donated or given away.
Right.
That way it takes so much stress off of their children and grandchildren for, that eventual passing, as we all have to do.
Right.
So I just fell in love with that idea. And, I know it's kind of a silly thing called Swedish death cleaning. But
yeah, sounds a bad name.
It sounds, rather tragic. But it's actually a really kind thing for you to do for your relatives as you're aging. And it also helps you manage that whole, I have too many things. Mm-hmm. I think it's similar to the whole Marie Kondo, does this thing bring you joy? Mm-hmm. And that's a really good exercise as well. But I think it's also kind of will my children or my grandchildren want or need this thing?
Right.
So I think it's a different exercise and extremely powerful for me, just because as I'm aging, I'm starting to think about, what am I going to do with all the things that I own, and who am I going to give them to?
Right. And I do think that I love that concept. I don't like the name, but I like the concept. It makes you think differently about going through your house, and if this is not serving you, or not hanging on to it just to hang on to it, kind of a thing.
Right. Exactly.
So doing things a little differently. I know that talking about purging things, it sounds logical, but it's hard for a lot of people. I know several people personally who I just got to go through my house and purge stuff. I just got to go through my house and purge. And they keep putting it off because it's not just a physical nasty task, depending on the state of your house, but it's an emotional one. It's a mental one. I remember I was going through, I was thinking about changing jobs and working from home. And I decided to go through my entire office and clean it up and go through everything. I took everything out of the shelves, everything out of the closets, everything off my, and I thought, I'm only going to put stuff back in that I'm actually going to use. Mm-hmm. And it was like going through, because when you purge, it's not as simple as just taking this and put in the can. You have to go, oh, I wonder what this is. And you go through those memories. You got to let yourself go through that. And so I kept going through all these things that, productions that Sarah and I had created at the TV station and things that we had done. And I'm like, Sarah, we've done so much. I mean, it was overwhelming because I couldn't figure out what to do with everything, but it was also nice. It was a nice day. And I remember calling you on the phone and saying, we've got to do something else. We got to keep going because we've done such great things. And boom, here this podcast is existing because of that. So, but yeah, sometimes purging, when you get to the other side of it, it's like medicinal. It's very freeing. It was like, okay, I know what everything is in here. I have a thing about a closet in that when I open a closet door, if I can't see or know what it is, then there's too much stuff in there.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly, I do, like when I'm stressed. And I'm also a teacher, and so if when a teacher's got to grade something, like, well, maybe I got to take this closet apart before I grade. Well, we will invent things to clean before we grade. And so I have several closets in the house that I have literally taken apart multiple times a year and just said, okay, let me just straighten it up or organize it differently or purge some stuff out of it. It's a cleansing thing.
Yeah.
But it's hard for a lot of people to start and do it.
Oh, yeah.
And so one of the things people can consider doing is there are professionals out there that will come in and help you go through that. You have to do the emotional work. You can't offload that, but helping you think differently about it. Sometimes just when someone doesn't know what it is and is asking you the right questions, they can make you think differently about it. Or maybe it's, okay, I had a pair of pants that I just loved, but I couldn't fit anymore. And I thought one day I'm going to get back in them. And then eventually I was like, no, I'm going to give this to someone who I know who's going to wear it, and I'm going to see it. I'm going to have visitation rights. I'm going to see my favorite skirt or my favorite pair of pants. So letting it go and live its life instead of we all have those jeans or pants in our ground that we're like, one day I'm going to get back in them. One day. And, maybe that day's not coming.
You do have to be realistic.
You do have to be realistic, and you're not letting anybody else wear those pants or those things. So, letting someone else enjoy it. And I know it's hard, but if you can't get started, maybe it's time to bring in a professional to kind of help you do that.
And I think also the professionals will not only give you tips. They can also help guide the process as far as don't try to do too much too fast, because I think that people get it in their heads. I'm going to clean out my house. I'm going to make this purge, and then they get completely overwhelmed once they get to the first thing. Yeah, it's like take a 2 square foot area of your kitchen and go through the cabinets and get rid of just a few things, and it's going to make you feel like it's an accomplishable task instead of trying to say, I'm going to reorganize my entire kitchen. Right. Because I know it with my mom's kitchen, before she passed away, there were so many glasses and plates and just things that she had collected over the years, and I got completely overwhelmed. Right. And I needed to take it a little bit at a time. Right. Now, when my grandmother passed and everyone was, there were certain things I knew I wanted in that house. But then when everyone comes and gets what they want, and then there's tons of stuff left, and then it's like, who's going to take this? And who's going to take this? And there's a lot of this was very expensive, and this meant a lot to her. Someone needs to take this. You got to unpack that. There are a few things that I did agree to take, my grandmother had she had a very fancy bedroom suits, and the top of them were marble. It was nothing I'd ever seen before. And they got it as a wedding gift. So they got the whole suite, the bed, the chest of drawers, and then the nightstands and the lamps. Even the lamps went with it. And the lamps were marble, full marble. Oh, wow. And I remember when I was in their room, just seeing, I was just thinking how decadent they were. And when we were unpacking the house, nobody wanted them. And I'm like, well, I'll take them. I mean, they're not my style, but I take them, and they're now in my bedroom. And now every time I see them, I think of her. I'm like, that's when you take some
something that means something that triggers a memory. That's
Sure.
a good thing. Not like the entire house. Like you don't just
Right.
don't just like the whole house home. Let's bring something that actually means something that when I see it, it makes me think of a happy thought.
Exactly. You made the mention a little bit earlier about your mom wanting to kind of keep everything the same.
Yeah.
And I get that. I mean, we tend to want to preserve the things that make us happy or bring good memories, but it needs to have a life.
Right.
I think of it, just like anything, life evolves, things evolve, and make sure that they're still being used. You don't want them just sitting in a corner gathering dust.
Right.
And so, I think that's a beautiful thing that you now have your grandmother's furniture.
Yeah.
Because it has new life and it reminds you of her.
Right. But the whole concept of collections and collecting things and like, when people got married, they picked out their wedding china, and then I'm like, what are you doing? Like our Gen X never did that. We never had.
Oh, I did.
You had china?
I did.
What was your pattern, Sarah?
Oh my gosh, it was. I can't remember the manufacturer, but it was actually pretty. It had a black band around with this tiny flowers and gold kind of twining vines, and it was pretty. My ex-husband's family, it was just one of those things. I mean, that's what you did. You registered for China.
Okay.
So we did. And we got enough for, I think, 6, place settings. But literally, we used one time in the 7 years we were married. And so when we divorced, it was one of those things of, I asked him if he wanted it, and I didn't want it. And so we ended up selling it to replacements because it was one of those things of like, what am I going to do with fine china?
Right.
I kept the silverware, but I ended up, all of the china went to replacements because it was just, what are you going to do with it?
I did not know that you had a china pattern, Sarah. I feel rocked. I feel like I've known you so long. How did I not know that you had a china pattern?
No, it was 1991. People were still doing it then.
Oh.
So.
Interesting.
I mean, but now, if I were to, get married today, and there's no way I would pick a china pattern.
No.
I might ask for Lowe's gift cards because
yeah.
to like make improvements to my house, but it's certainly not going to be china.
No. So, one last question I want to ask you is that, how you talked a bit earlier about when your mom wanted to give you something that meant and it was hard. Mm-hmm. Did you ever figure out like what to do, like how to handle that, or did you just like maybe later in hindsight?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard because, again, like I said earlier, it hurt her feelings, and I kind of did a little bit of what Andy did. There were some things that she gave me and my dad gave me. It was just like when I got home, I either donated it or threw it away just because it was nothing that I could deal with. But there were also things that I still have literally in a closet at home just because they had such a huge emotional impact on her. Mm-hmm. And she wanted me to have, it's like I have this vase that was my great-great-grandmother's that is broken.
Right.
But it's a piece of our family history.
Right.
But it's in a box in the closet because it's broken. And so I'm afraid to put it out because I'm afraid it's going to fall apart if I put it up on a shelf. And I also have a clock that my dad made from a kit. It's a grandmother's clock that hangs on the wall. But I live in a really small farmhouse. This clock is almost 4.5 feet tall. I have nowhere to put it in my house. And so literally it's on the floor of my closet and I don't know what to do with it. But I can't, I'm not at the emotional place that I can get rid of it yet.
I hear you. Yeah, it's a process. But I mean, you know that eventually you probably will get rid of that. Because Heather would not want to. She's like, why did she save a broken vase? I mean, I'm imagining
a broken vase and a clock that sits on the floor. Exactly. But it's lovely too. I mean, because my parents. They were trying to be generous, and that's the spirit you kind of have to take it as. And even if you're not going to keep the thing, they're giving it to you out of generosity and love.
I remember when my mom, both my parents, their houses, they were divorced, of course, and their houses were unraveling at the same time. So Dad was moving into assisted living, and Mom she couldn't pay her mortgage and was being kicked out. And she, again. It's that generosity. It comes from a good intent. Mm-hmm. And I remember her unannounced pulling up in front of my house with a trailer, and it was just full of stuff to bring to me.
Oh, no.
I had no idea what was on that. Mainly it was outside stuff. and she just starts unloading it in my yard. And I'm like trying to deal with it, and she's having a meltdown. She's like, I'm trying to get rid of stuff. And so I ended up just taking it and putting it like under my house and like put it somewhere. And then I just ended up having a yard sale. Like she gave me her lawnmower and leaf blower and like these things, and like I got them to turn on, and they were got in good shape. And I'm like, I'm just going to have a yard sale and just sell all this stuff. Like Dad left me all these tools. Like I had like 6 shovels. I only have 2 feet. I can only use 1 shovel at a time. And I mean, there's different kinds of shovels, but like, why do I need 6 shovels?
Yeah.
I don't have a construction company.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing it at a yard sale. And what's funny is like, if you ever done a yard sale, tools and yard stuff,
first thing.
Oh my gosh. I had people like come 2 hours before the things actually started. And like, he just came and like one man just came and like put all his tools in my arm, and he bought everything. He was like, I'm taking all this. Where's all the yard equipment? I'm buying everything. I'm like, dang, wish I had more.
I know. I had the same experience when my ex-husband and I were breaking up the household, and we had a yard sale.
Yeah.
And it was the lawn furniture, the tools, and the like lawnmowers and trimmers and things like that. It was gone. The clothes, the rugs, all of the furniture stuff. Nobody wanted that. We ended up donating all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So
it does make you think. Once you go through all these experiences through your lifetime, it does make you think differently about what you're going to go out there and buy and what you're going to keep and your relationship with this stuff. So, yeah. Now's the time. If you're hearing this and you've been thinking about purging, now's the time to like put your toe in the water and just start thinking about your relationship with your things. And is it things or is it stuff?
Right. Definitely.
Today we talked about our relationships with things and how our relationship changes over time. It's more than cleaning out a closet that you keep putting off. It's about how you think, buy, keep, and give away your things. There are many reasons why we surround ourselves with things that we love. For instance, I do love a good handbag, and I do have this feeling that there's always more to buy, because especially like there's a backpack and there's a tote and there's it's just a cute purse that I would carry out. Or I can spend a whole episode talking about my rationale of buying handbags, but that's like the one thing I will go out and buy myself, either online or in person. I will go and buy. What is it for you again?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's a couple of things that thinking about what's in my house right now that I kind of collect a little bit. One is T-shirts. I have a lot of graphic tees. As I've gotten older, it's kind of like become a quirk that I like graphic T-shirts. So I have a lot of T-shirts with like different pictures and artwork on them. It's kind of become a thing. I even wear them to work because I'm a creative person in the creative field, so that I can put a jacket over it and it works. But then also I'm a musician, and so I have all of these instruments. I sit at my desk and I look to my right, and I've got a whole line I've got a banjo, and I've got 2 basses, and I've got ukuleles, and I've got all kinds of stuff. And so, but those things all bring me joy, and I use them, so I don't feel too bad about collecting them. It's the things that I have that I don't use, that's where I feel the guilt.
Right. And this episode's definitely not suggesting that you just go ahead and give rid of all your stuff, but it's being honest about why you have the stuff that you have. And after you've gone through, if you've lost a loved one and you've had to step into their household, and that's when their things become stuff, and you have to find new destinations. That's when you find wow, people have a lot of stuff. And do I want my loved ones to have to do the same thing for my house? I'm a big purger. I like taking apart a closet. I know it's not everyone's favorite thing. I get it. But it's time to be honest with yourself about what you own and being realistic with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to kind of go along with that, there are folks who do struggle, and there's a medical reason why they struggle with getting rid of things. So we do have to acknowledge that
Right.
sometimes it's not as easy of just going into the closet and start taking things off, because
Right.
some people are just incapable of doing that. And if that is you or a loved one, there are people who can help you through that
Right.
process. There are mental health professionals out there who can help you prioritize, doing some of that cleanup in your home.
Right. And I find for me that how much stuff I have around me, that clutter influences my mental health.
Oh, definitely.
So if I'm in a room and it is messy, or I've got too much stuff in there, I find myself easily distracted by all the mess, and I have to just stop and let me clean this up and get myself mentally right. But if you are someone who's struggling with, how do I attack this clutter? How do I do this? A mental health professional. If you're really struggling at an emotional level, it's time to talk that out. But if you're ready to take that next step, make that next step small. Do a small next step. Don't overwhelm yourself. Maybe this corner of this room, I'm just gonna organize.
Yeah.
Just get your mind right. And you'll find that it's like a boulder going down a hill, and that once you get started, you're gonna start getting some ideas and get excited and see the difference, and then keep moving. You also need to talk about your things with your loved ones. What is, my dad was like, I love this, and it's going to make so much money. And really, his NASCAR collection did not make any money. We had to beg people to buy it. So having that reality check with that. But if you're wanting to really downsize your house and think about that, you can actually approach a professional. There's professional organizers out there who can be that fresh set of eyes and come in and ask you pointed questions, and maybe even have give you some ideas how to reorganize it. Or is this something that it's not helping you here? It's time to let that have another life. That pair of pants that I loved. I love that pair of pants, but my butt would not let me get back into it. So instead, I gave it to someone who I saw, and I got to have visitation rights with those pants and see those pants. So understanding that decluttering and addressing your issues with things is an emotional process. And so give yourself space for that and time for that, so you can go through that process well.
Yeah. And also remember too that your definition of clutter is different than another person's definition of clutter.
Yes.
And so where is your comfort level? And we all have different comfort levels. And so acknowledging that. And that's, again, where you start having conversations with your loved ones, the people you live with. What is that tolerance level for clutter? Because it may not work for both people in the household. So
Right.
having those conversations is important.
Right, definitely. So, yeah, it's time to think about it, and if you need help, it's time to reach out. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Your loved ones, a mental health professional or an organization professional, let them help you get started. Because once you get started, once you get to the other side, you're going to feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
So-
time.
So tell us in the comments or send us a message and let us know, what are some of your tips and tricks? What works for you? What makes you feel more comfortable with your stuff? We'd love to hear about it. Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining us for Free Range Flock. Our goal is to inspire and celebrate who we are, the Generation X kids who grew up and decided to do things their way, with grace, humor, and joy. This has been a production of Sassy Am. If you want to learn more about our podcast, follow our blog, share your positive insights about being a free ranger, or to suggest topics or guests for future episodes, please visit our website at sassyam.com. That's SASSAYAM.com. Keep pushing.